Hey everybody, welcome to the Conscious Love Show. Whether you are single, you are in a relationship, or you're healing a broken heart, this show is here to inspire you, to remind you how beautiful, lovable, and amazing you truly are, and to give you the practical tools and insights to navigate from wherever you are right now to the loving relationship that you so deeply want to have. My name is Shane Kohler. I'm a certified transformational coach and trainer with over a decade experience helping people release their trauma and open their hearts to love. I've delivered seminars all over the world, coached thousands of people through my online platforms and programs, and every week I'm coming straight to you with the hottest insights and the best teachers around, bringing you powerful resources and profound conversations to heal your relationship with love, dating, and yourself. I'm so grateful you're here, and if it's your first time, welcome. You can count on me to always show up for you with my very best and a commitment to learn and grow myself so I can serve you to my maximum ability. Thanks so much for tuning into the show. I've got some awesome things planned for you today. So without further ado, let's dive in. Okay, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Conscious Love Show podcast. Shane Kohler with you. Pleasure to be on today. Looking forward to diving in. Today, we are talking about how to ask for what you want with confidence and clarity. And this is going to be a powerful conversation where we really dive into the nuance of expressing your needs in a relationship, right? Expressing your desires, addressing these deep, vulnerable, sometimes uncomfortable or challenging conversations, right? And we all they're essential. We need to have them. The idea, there's this false narrative, maybe we get it from romantic comedies or whatever, but there's this false narrative that when we meet the right person, they're just going to know what we want and know what we need, and it's going to be perfect and we won't have to do any work. And I think most of my listeners are not that naive. I think, us as a whole are outgrowing that kind of naivety that maybe we had when we were younger or, when we grew up on Disney movies. But the truth is that a relationship cannot get to where you want it to be without having a lot of vulnerable, uncomfortable conversations. And that's just the way it is. I mean, when I look at my relationship with my wife, we've been together over 8 years now. And, we've developed a really, really incredible partnership. I mean, really amazing. When I was younger, I used to dream about having a partner. This is everything I would have wanted. But I didn't even know, until I got with her and we started and got beyond our first year and really got into the nitty gritty stuff in our relationship. I didn't even know what was involved in this. And, I think there's a lot of nuance here because our needs change, right? Our needs change. What we needed in the first year wasn't what we needed in the third year or the fifth year. And not only that, but it's not that just our needs change, but our readiness and willingness to meet each other's needs change. And what I mean by that is in the beginning, there's a hormonal chemical cocktail going on, which I've done deep dives on this in previous podcast episodes, but it's in the beginning, it tends to be very easy to meet each other's needs because we're driven by these hormones of, dopamine and norepinephrine and these things that are kind of driving us together. But, what comes up must also come down, right? And there's a tendency to, as we get deeper into the relationship, as we exit that honeymoon phase, when, the hormones aren't driving us anymore, and there's actually a need for a degree of discipline, right? Where we're not just naturally leaning into the relationship all the time, but we have to commit and dedicate to it. And sometimes meeting each other's needs, it's not what we necessarily want to do in that moment, but we do it because we love each other. We do it because we care about each other, right? So all of this is part of the conversation. And I think there are certain conversations you have early on, right? That kind of establish some basic things in the relationship. And then there are conversations you have later on as you unfold. And I'll just share this with myself and my wife, we we've had a lot of these conversations. We've had these days where we would sit on the couch and not leave for 8 hours, and we'd be like kind of hashing it out and fighting and be very uncomfortable. And like nobody wants to do that, right? Like nobody wants to do that. But what I identified early on in our relationship is that our relationship would reach make or break points. And I think it's important for all of us to understand that for a relationship to succeed, we have to be willing to take it to a make or break point. And what I mean by that is it's a point where it's like, listen, we're gonna go all the way. And we're either gonna come out of this stronger or we're gonna go our separate ways. And I'm open to either outcome. But what I know is there is something that needs to be sincerely expressed in this relationship, right? Like there's something we need to communicate about. There's something we need to find common ground on. And we're going to take it all the way to the breaking point. And we're either going to find that common ground and move forward stronger than ever, or we're just not going to find the common ground and we're going to decide, hey, like with love and respect, we need to go our separate ways. I think it is truly essential for relationships to approach that point many times. And I think one of the reasons like my relationship with my wife is so secure today is because we've gone to those points many times. And because we've gone to those points many times, what has happened is we've developed like a sense of like, I can trust my partner because I know that when push comes to shove, we find that common ground and we pull through. And if you haven't gone there with someone, then you don't really know what the relationship is made of. And I think so many of us, out of our fear of loss, our fear of abandonment, our attachment wounds, our need to like be with this person, out of all of this kind of wounding and fear, we avoid going to those points. And the thing is you can't really avoid those points, but you're either going to address them head on and you're going to like tackle it together as a team. Like, look, we need to go here, or you're going to avoid it and it's going to come out in sideways ways. And so when you avoid these things, what happens is there's like a resentment that builds up. There's a dissatisfaction that comes up. And then what happens is you become critical of each other. You withdraw intimacy from each other. I often say that in these kinds of dynamics, love becomes like a currency, right? So it's not like love is something that is freely given and freely expressed in our relationship, but love becomes something that we give in order to get. I'll give you some love if I can get you to do what I want you to do. And then as the relationship progresses year by year by year, that love becomes less and less. The more you disappoint each other, the more you let each other down, the more frustration and resentment builds, the more that love is like given less and less and less, and you grow further and further and further apart. And we see this a lot. I mean, it's not uncommon to recognize that there are couples who have been together for a long time. They've been together 20 years and maybe they're married and they stay together for the kids, or they stay together because it's financially convenient. But what happens is they live in separate worlds. And maybe they even have sex like, once a month or a couple times a month. And it's just kind of like they do it and they get it done. But the aliveness, the passion, the vitality is not there between them. They've learned how to survive together, but they haven't learned how to thrive together. And so what I'm going to talk about in today's episode is how do we really thrive, right? How do we really lean into a relationship in a powerful way that allows it to thrive? And the way we do that is by learning to ask for what we need, right? Learning to ask for what we want, learning to address those difficult, vulnerable, sensitive conversations. And I think one of the most important things to start with here is, why don't we do that, right? What are the barriers or the blocks that prevent us from doing that? Because if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. And I think we all, in varying degrees, have a pretty core fear of abandonment. And this is something that is rooted in our wounding. It generally comes from childhood in some degree. And I think like we experience this in different ways. And it doesn't really matter who you are. Like I remember like when I was a kid, and I've shared often, like I had a great mother. I have a great mother. Yes, she made her mistakes like all parents do. But my mom was a 19-year-old girl, right? She was pregnant with me when she was still in high school. I mean, like just the complexity of what my mom was dealing with when she was raising me. There was no way I wouldn't pick up some wounding from that. And it wasn't her fault. I mean, she could have chosen not to have me, but she chose to have me, right? So like even in that, like what a gift that she gave me in choosing to have me. But that also came with some give and some take. And my mom was a 19-year-old girl trying to go to school, trying to go to work, I mean, and I say all this to say that I know where one of my core wounds came from was being dropped off at daycare. And like I mean, how many of us were dropped off at daycare? Most of us probably, right? So this isn't like, it's not something my mother did wrong. But when we look at how attachment develops and the uncertainty that a child experiences when they go from the safety and security of being with their mother to being dropped off in a strange environment when there's 100 kids there and there's bullying and there's all kinds of stuff, and the facilitators are not the nicest people, and I mean there are all kinds of stuff that happens in daycares, right? And the uncertainty that develops when you're with your mother and it's comfortable and it's safe and it's soothing, and then you go to daycare and it's unpredictable and it's crazy and it's chaotic, and you're like this big, right? And then the back and forth. And I just remember like when I was a kid, I would have these screaming like fits when my mom would drop me off. And then it would be weird. Like I would have these screaming fits. No, don't leave, don't leave, don't leave. And I would cry and all of this. And then she would leave. And then she would come back at the end of the day and I would hide from her and I wouldn't want to go with her. And I'd like go find a back corner in the daycare somewhere. And I'd like hope she wouldn't find me. And like, why would I do that? Well, because she broke my trust. Now, I didn't understand what was happening to me. I was this little guy with no awareness of myself. I didn't even have a brain that was developed enough to have awareness of myself. I was living on pure survival instinct. And my mom was just going to work, going to school, trying to be a good mother, trying to provide a good life for us. She wasn't doing anything wrong. These are just the things that happen. Right? Some of us might have grown up in an environment where our parents had really high standards and we were always expected to like impress them and to be perfect and to get perfect grades and to be a perfect athlete or whatever, right? And we were always expected to impress them. And we start to develop this internal complex of never being enough and always having to prove ourselves. And every time that there is some result, a grade, athletic achievement, whatever it might be, every time that we have to present to our parents some kind of result, there's this internal complex that develops like, am I going to be good enough? Am I going to get their approval? And I'm just giving a few examples here, but the kinds of things I'm describing become our blueprint for relationships. So by the time we're adults, do you think I might be fearing abandonment the same way that I feared it when my mom would drop me off at daycare? Absolutely. Right? Absolutely, I would. Do you think when, we're dating somebody and we're getting to know them and we were in an environment where growing up, we had to constantly like try to be good enough for our parents? Do you think I'm going to fear that maybe I'm not going to be good enough for that person? That they're going to find some fault in me? Absolutely. And some of us had wonderful parents. I'm not taking anything from our parents. Sometimes it wasn't even our parents, right? Sometimes it was other people in our lives. But I think nobody makes it through childhood without some degree of fearing abandonment. And our adult relationships are the hospitals that heal the wounds that we got in childhood. Right? Whatever wounding I picked up when I was younger, and again, it's not just with my parents. Like, think about going to school, how traumatizing that is. I mean, you're dealing with bullies, you're dealing with like trying to fit in and be accepted by other kids. You're dealing with like little clique groups of like, are they going to let me in or are they not? You're dealing with like being humiliated and made fun of. And then there's like, I mean, there's so many social dynamics when you're in first grade. Like, I mean, it's just like all of this is insanely traumatizing. And I'm not saying it's bad. This is just the nature of being a human. But we pick up a certain degree of trauma from it. And we develop these impressions, and we develop them at a time in our lives when we couldn't do any differently. As I mentioned earlier, like our brains and our consciousness are not developed enough to handle it any other way. So whatever happens to us in childhood, it happens the way it happens. We get the impressions that we get. And then as an adult, we have to heal those things in our adult relationships. And I've often said that you can't really heal on your own. Like, healing does not happen in isolation. Yes, you can listen to podcasts. I listen to podcasts every day. I think they're wonderful. Like, they open up so much possibility. They give so much insight, right? You can read books, like you can do so much, but healing only happens when you apply the things that you learn from books and podcasts in relationship with other people. This is one of the reasons that my Inspired Love program is so powerful and it creates such lasting transformation in people, is because what we're doing is we're doing it in a group, in a social environment. And so what we're learning is actually being applied in relationship with each other. A lot of the women who are in my programs have shared that working with a masculine coach has really helped them because they get to be in relationship with the masculine in a safe and healthy environment in a way that they've never had before. And that allows them to heal their relationship with the masculine, where they're going from like this toxic relationship to toxic relationship to toxic relationship, and they've never had a healthy relationship with a man. Right? So healing happens in relationship, and whatever wounds we accumulate when we're younger, we have to heal those as adults in relationship with other adults. And so as I get into this idea of asking for what we need with clarity and confidence, I want you to understand that what we're really talking about here, this process of asking for what you need, is about healing all the wounds and all the impressions that have left you thinking you're not worthy of receiving what you need and what you want in a relationship. The very process of asking for what you need is a process of healing the abandonment wounds that we've accumulated throughout our lives. And there's often an idea that if I am going to heal, it needs to be a safe environment. It needs to be a loving environment. I need to be met with acceptance and grace and understanding. That's actually not true. So while you need the reflection of a relationship in order to heal, you don't need the other person to respond any particular way. Somebody ghosting you can be a healing experience for you. Now, I don't think ghosting is right. I think every human being deserves the dignity of an acknowledgement, even if it's just, I don't want to take this any further. It's been nice getting to know you. I think everybody deserves that dignity, but unfortunately, that's not the reality of the world we live in. But you can heal through a ghosting experience if you go through it with consciousness, with awareness, with a certain set of tools that empower you. You can also heal with acceptance, love. It might be a little easier, right, to heal when we receive acceptance and love. But these wounds or these fears of abandonment, the fear of rejection, the fear of being seen as too much, the societal conditioning saying that there's something gross or cringe about being needy or asking for what you want in a relationship, these become the social barriers and the relational barriers that prevent us from actually clarifying what a relationship can truly be. And it's something that I think we all need to outgrow. It's like it's a very immature mentality. It's like a middle school mentality, right? And like, again, going back to like how traumatizing school is. If you were to be needy in middle school, you might be publicly ridiculed. You might be like publicly humiliated, right? People might like reject you on like a mass social level. So there's like a real fear that gets ingrained in us that says it's not safe to express myself in this way. It's not safe to express my vulnerability. It's not safe to be seen. And there was a time in our lives, again, maybe as a teenager, right? Like if you had a crush on someone and you were to let them know or let somebody know that you had a crush on them and that were to get out and people were to find out about it and they were to start talking about it, then all of a sudden, like you're being publicly made fun of. Like there was a time in our lives when that was a real threat. And we tend to get like emotionally stunted when we grow up in these environments and we have these experiences. It tends to stunt our emotional development. It stunts our emotional maturity. And so here we are in an adult relationship, but we're operating with like an immature teenage level of emotional maturity. And so as I said, our adult relationships are an opportunity to heal that. So what we've got to do is we've got to shift the narrative around needs, right? Recognizing that everybody's needy. Everybody's needy. And yes, there are people who are a little bit more secure in their needs, which is what I would aim, the listeners or people I work with towards developing that security around your needs. And there are people who are insecure around their needs. But what I'm getting at here is everybody is needy and that we all have needs. The most stoic, strong, maybe avoidant type man that you can imagine. And I'm using that archetype because that's when we think of not being needy, that's generally the kind of image we come up with. Could also be a strong stoic woman, right? But that person, all their stoicism and all their strength and all that persona they put on is actually a protection against a time in their lives when they were vulnerable, when they expressed their needs and they weren't validated, they weren't received, they weren't accepted. Right? This is fundamental to every human being. And so as we reframe the narrative, what we want to start to recognize is having needs doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you pathetic. It doesn't make you undesirable. It makes you fundamentally human. And I think it's important to establish that because if we don't establish that, we're not going to be able to have security and strength around our needs. And it's not having needs that makes you undesirable. It's not expressing needs that makes you undesirable. It is the energy through which that is expressed. And when I talk about desirable, what I'm getting at here is there's a certain energy that invites someone in, that inspires them to meet you, that invites them to want to meet your needs. And there's an energy that makes them, I don't know about that. There's an energy that kind of pushes people away. It's an unattractive energy. There's an attractive energy and there's an unattractive energy. And I'm not even talking about how you look or anything like that. I'm talking about attractive being the energy that pulls someone in, unattractive energy being the energy that pushes someone out. Hey there, listeners. Let me ask you a question. When was the last time you really prioritized your mental health? If life feels overwhelming, stressful, or just plain chaotic, I've got something that could truly make a difference. I want to introduce you to Aura, the #1 app for emotional wellness. Aura offers personalized mindfulness and mental health support that fits your life. Whether you're looking for guided meditations, soothing sleep sounds, life coaching, or breathwork exercises, Aura has something for everyone. The best part? It's tailored specifically to you. Aura learns your preferences and creates a daily routine that supports your unique emotional needs. Now, here's the exciting part. As part of my podcast family, Aura is giving you an exclusive 7-day free trial. That's a full week to explore their library of thousands of wellness tools and discover what works best for you. So take this opportunity to reset, recharge, and show up for yourself. Head to the link in the show notes right below wherever you're listening to this podcast to claim your 7-day free trial. Don't wait. Your mental wellness is worth it. Let Aura help you find peace, balance, and clarity right at your fingertips. Go ahead. Try it today. You deserve it. If you've ever felt like you're stuck in the same painful patterns, questioning why love feels so hard, or struggling to find the deep connection you know you deserve, there's something I want to share with you. The Inspired Love program is an 8-week journey designed to help you break free from toxic cycles, heal the wounds of your past, and prepare yourself to attract and sustain the conscious, fulfilling love that you've been searching for. This isn't just another course. It's a deeply personal experience that will reconnect you to your inherent worth, clear the barrier standing between you and love, and help you create a solid foundation for the healthy, conscious relationship you've always dreamed about. Together in a small and intimate group, we'll tackle the deepest fears and insecurities holding you back and emerge on the other side, free to live and love in alignment with your highest self. Our next journey begins soon, and space is limited to keep the group focused, supportive, and intimate. Whether you're single, recovering from heartbreak, or ready to heal and transform your current relationship, this program will give you the tools, guidance, and connection you need to rewrite your story and create the love you deserve. So don't wait. Love starts with you, and there's no better time than now to take this step. Tap the link in the show notes to learn more and claim your spot in this life-changing program. I want you to be part of this journey because you're worth it, and the love you desire is closer than you think. So let's do this together. Again, we all have needs, but are we expressing them in an attractive way, a way that invites someone in, or are we expressing them in a way that pushes someone out? Now, what might be examples of those two different approaches? The unattractive energy, the energy that kind of pushes someone out. The unattractive energy, if I could, I want to name it. So if I could name it, it's something like, I don't really feel that I am worthy of having my needs met. I don't really feel that I am desirable enough or wanted enough that this person would care to meet my needs. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to indirectly try to get my needs met through some form of manipulation. And that could look like, I'm going to try really, really hard to prove how great I am, to show them how lovable I am. And if I try really, really hard to prove myself and show them how lovable I am, then they're going to see that I'm great and they're going to want to meet my needs. That's an unattractive energy. It could also look like a criticism of a person, right? Like, oh, they're not doing X, Y, or Z, so they're bad or they're wrong. I want you to recognize that anytime you're in any kind of a relationship, I mean, this goes across the board for all relationships, but for potency's sake, let's keep it to romantic relationships. But if you're dating, if you're getting to know someone, And you're sitting back being critical of everything they're doing right or wrong. Oh, they're not texting back, or they're not showing up, or like, and not, I mean, you can have a clear discernment of like, okay, I'm looking for certain things and they don't seem to be showing up with those certain things. And it's okay to have discernment about that. But when there's an anger behind it, when there's an angry judgment that they are not being who I want them to be, you've got to understand that resistance energy is going to push someone out of your life. And that's something that people pick up. And like what a lot of people will do is they'll act so pleasant. And so like on the surface, they'll pretend like nothing's wrong. And underneath they're seething. And we think we can hide that from someone. We can't hide that. We can't hide that resentment, that frustration. It just comes out. And so these are different forms of unattractive energy. It's energy that pushes someone away. Now, an attractive energy, if I could name it again, attractive energy looks like, I know that I'm worthy. I know that I deserve to have someone meet my needs. I know that I deserve someone's care and attentiveness. I know that I deserve someone's love and affection. I know that I bring a lot of value to a relationship. And so if I'm bringing a lot of value to a relationship, I also recognize that I deserve to receive value in return. Right? There's a certainty, there's a security. There's also in it a humility of like, I recognize that I have needs and without shame. Like it is valid and it is okay for me to have needs. There's also a recognition that, yes, I have needs. And yes, maybe like a romantic partnership is one of the most ideal ways to have some of my most sensitive needs met. But I also recognize that it's not the only way. And I can have my needs met in other ways. I can have my needs for connection be met in friendships and other relationships. I can meet my own sexual needs, right? Like yes, it's maybe one of the ideal ways. It's maybe the ultimate way, but it's not the only way. And I also recognize that I can tend to my own needs in other ways. And if I'm going to be investing energy into a relationship, it needs to add more to my life than I would have without it. Because if it doesn't, then I can just be satisfied with meeting my own needs. So all of this that I'm describing here, this exists within the person. Right? This exists within the person. And it's something we bring to a relationship. Now, the unattractive energy might be people pleasing, proving myself. Let me show you how great I am. Love me, please love me. I'll never rock the boat. I'll never disrupt anything. I'll be everything you want me to be. Just please love me. Just please meet my needs. It might be criticizing. Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? I'm looking for blah, 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 and you never blah, blah, blah. The attractive energy is expressed. I want to use an example just to make this really clear. There was a student in my Inspired Love program. We were working with this very conversation. And she was expressing something along the lines of like, I've been dating this guy for a while. We see each other a couple times a week. It's really great. We have a great connection. He's been consistent. But what I find is that, we'll see each other, we'll go on a date, And then, it'll be quiet for a few days, and then he'll reach out again and want to get together. And then we'll go out, we'll have a great time, but then it'll be quiet for a few days. And these gaps in connection, right? 2, 3 days at a time, 4 days at a time, I'm not hearing anything from him. And I would really like to hear more from him in the space between our dates. That would make me feel more secure. It would allow me to trust in this connection more. It would allow me to feel safer investing more emotionally. It would demonstrate that he has, clearer intentions beyond just seeing each other, 2, 3 times a week, that he actually does want to move towards more than that. Right. So this is the whole conversation we had. And so we talked about it a little bit, and I asked her to really clarify what she would want to ask for from him. And after all the discussion, she got down to this, I would like him to text me good morning every morning. Right? Like, just even if he has a busy day, even if he can't talk a lot, but I would just like, to know that I'm on his mind and that he wants to say good morning every morning. And I was like, that is absolutely valid. And again, right, there's a level of, if he's willing to take this step, then I am willing to invest more emotionally. Then I am willing to give more of myself if he's willing to give more of his self. So there's a recognition of value on both sides. It's not like, oh, well, I'm not worth anything and I'm not really lovable. And, I don't even know if he likes me that much, but, I hope that he's going to want more. Like, it's not that kind of energy. It's like, no, I recognize what I have to offer. I recognize the value that I have. He seems to see that because he wants to keep seeing me and keep going out. But before I give him more, I'm going to ask for something here. And then the conversation might look something like this. I've been thinking, and I really enjoy our connection. I really enjoy the time we spend together. We've had some great dates. It's been a lot of fun getting to know you. I'm feeling that as we get to know each other and as we spend more time together, I am becoming more emotionally invested in this. And I'm realizing that as I become more emotionally invested, I also would like to feel a little more security in this relationship. And so something that would really support in helping me have that security would be if you could send me a text every morning and just wish me a good morning. And that would let me know that I'm on your mind, that you're thinking about me. It would let me know that you're intentional about fostering a connection beyond just seeing each other a couple times a week. And before I become too emotionally invested in this relationship, I would like to know and see and experience that you're willing to meet me on that level. What do you think about that? Now, I want you to just think about like the different elements that were exposed in there, right? There's a vulnerability, like a humility and a vulnerability in the acknowledgement that I need this from you. We tend to think that's weakness. That's not weakness. It's weakness when there's shame around it, right? I need this from you, but I'm ashamed that I need this from you. That's weakness. I need this from you. I feel secure that I need this from you. I recognize that I need this from you. And that if you're going to have a place in my life, you're going to want to offer this. That's not weakness. That is incredibly powerful. People are so used to nobody being vulnerable, everybody hiding what they want, everybody hiding what they need, everybody trying to play it cool, everybody trying to maintain the upper hand, right? People are so used to that kind of shit that when they actually experience this kind of conversation, something in them goes, holy shit, this is the kind of person I could marry. I could see myself spending my entire life with someone who's this able to communicate clearly. It's such a blatant interruption to the whole toxic dating culture. And without coming out and saying it directly, what you're saying to this person is, I am a high value person. And if you want to have me in your life, you're going to recognize that and appreciate it. So let's look at what else was in that. There's an acknowledgement that I feel myself becoming more emotionally invested. I feel myself becoming more engaged in this. I find myself wanting more and thinking about it more. And I'm also acknowledging that my emotional investment is a gift. It's not a given. It's not something you just get because you're hot or because I like you or what. Like, yeah, I like you. Yeah, you're hot. Yeah, whatever. But you don't just get my emotional investment because of that. My emotional investment is a gift. I recognize that me emotionally investing in you is actually something you want. And so if I'm going to give you something you want, which is more of my emotional investment, then I'm going to need to receive something in return. I'm going to need you to create an environment that makes me feel safe enough to emotionally invest. And in this instance, the example was send me a text every morning. So I hope I've done a good job of really illustrating these two distinct approaches. Right? On the one hand, if we go back to the, unattractive approach, I might be people pleasing. I might be trying to prove myself. I might be trying to show how great I am and how lovable I am and how lucky he is to be with me or whatever. And then as I'm giving and giving and giving, I'm investing more and more and more and more, giving more of myself without asking for anything in return. And then underneath that, resentment is building. And so there's this imbalance of I'm giving too much of myself. On some level, I know that, and I'm pissed off about that. And so there's this, while I'm being pleasant on the surface, there's this undertone of resentment. And now what this person is experiencing on the other side is, it feels inauthentic. It feels fake. It feels like I can't trust the person. It feels dishonest. And whether I know it consciously or not, whether I'm fully aware of it, I can sense in my body that what they're revealing on the surface is not the whole truth. And that is cringe. And what somebody might end up feeling in that situation is like, this person was really cool. Like we really hit it off. But I don't know, like after a while, it didn't feel right. I wanted to like them, but the more I saw them, the more like there's just this weird energy. And I don't know, like it just, I feel like I've lost. I feel like I've lost whatever was there. Now, it's important to acknowledge on the attractive side that you may, if I go back to the example of, I want you to text me every morning. It's important to acknowledge that on that side of things, I want you to text me every morning. That person may say no. Right? So let's go back to the example I gave earlier and just say I had that whole conversation the same way. I want you to text me every morning. That would make me feel safe. It would make me feel secure. It would give me permission to, emotionally invest more in this relationship. And that person says, I don't know. Like, that feels like a lot right now. I don't know if we're ready for all that. I'd prefer to just keep it to a couple times a week, or maybe even worse, maybe they say, yeah, no problem. And then they don't do it. Well, what they're revealing in that is that they are not available for the kind of relationship you want to have. Now, is there nuance to this? Of course. If they did it every day for a week and then they missed a day, I would be forgiving about that. Right? They made sincere effort. Maybe they got up early. They had a crazy morning. They got yelled at by their boss or whatever, and they missed a day. Well, be forgiving about it. If they do it for a week and then they miss a day and then they do it the next day and then they miss 2 days and then they stop doing it, right? Like you bring it back up. You say, listen, a couple weeks ago, we had a conversation about this, and, I saw that, you really made the effort in that first week. And I want you to know that I really appreciate that. That meant a lot to me. But after that, you kind of fell off. And, I understand you have a lot going on. I understand you're busy, but like, this means a lot to me. This really does mean a lot to me. And if we're going to continue this relationship, if we're going to keep going down this path, like, this is one simple way that you can show me that this relationship means something to you. So do you think that you could really stick to that this time? And they might say, it's just a lot and I have a busy morning and blah, whatever. And you can be compromising too. You could say, look, I hear you. I get it. Maybe morning's not the best time, but what about like at some point throughout your day? Could you make a point? Right? Like, it doesn't have to be black and white. But what this is this is an engagement. You're engaging with each other. You're finding a way that this relationship can work for both of you through authentic, powerful communication. And yes, you can be compromising. It doesn't have to be like my way or the highway. If you don't do what I want you to, I'm out. But there's also a fundamental line where we say, like, look, I'm willing to be open-minded. I'm willing to compromise to a degree. But there's also like a baseline of what I need from someone. If I'm going to open my heart, if I'm going to invest emotionally, if I'm going to make myself available to them, right? There's a baseline of what I need in order to do that. And I might be flexible on that baseline, a little bit one way or the other, but not all the way. And so this is where, like, I want to say there is a knowing. There's a knowing when someone is just not willing to create the kind of relationship that you want to create with them. It becomes clear in the communication. It becomes clear in the promises they make and they keep, and the promises they make and they don't keep. It becomes clear in the level that they're willing to invest. Like, think about it like this. Like, I'm going to say this as a man, and like, this is true. Like, when I met my wife, it's true to this day. If I meet a woman and I want her in my life and I'm like, oh my God, like, this woman is amazing. Like, I want to have her in my life. And all she's asking for is for me to send her a text every morning. In comparison to what I receive from her when she becomes a part of my life, a text every morning is like not asking that much. This should never devolve into begging. In fact, if it starts to feel that way, it's appropriate to say, listen, I'm not going to beg for what I want. I like you. I enjoy our connection. But I know that I deserve someone who wants to meet me there and that I shouldn't have to beg for it. So you're either going to make this a priority or you're not. And I can't change you. I can't make you do anything. I hope that you would see enough value in this connection to make that effort. But if you don't, that's okay. But I want you to know that I am not going to stay and tolerate this. That's just something I'm not willing to do. And I've often said this, and I think it's appropriate here. The only real power we have in a relationship is our willingness to walk away. And at the extreme, that becomes manipulative. Right? At the extreme of that, where every time somebody doesn't do what you want, you threaten to leave them. That's fucked up. Like, don't do that. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying, I started out by saying this. I'm going to go back to it, right? The way to create the kind and the quality of relationship we want is to bring the relationship to a make or break point. We don't do this frivolously. We don't do it carelessly. We don't turn every little thing into a make or break point. But there are times when the relationship needs to go there. And if we are not willing to go to that make or break point, and when I say make or break, I said this earlier, but I'll just repeat it. The make or break is we are either going to align on this, like find common ground here and move forward stronger because of this, or this is going to be the end. But I'm not going to continue moving forward with this misalignment being part of our relationship. And when you are not willing to let go of a connection, when you are not willing to leave or release somebody, you are incapable of bringing a relationship to that make or break point. I've seen this happen a lot, particularly with women, where she would bring a relationship to that make or break point. The man would just, for whatever reason, say, I can't go there with you. And she would say, okay, then, with love, with respect, we need to go our separate ways. And then separate. And then maybe a few days goes by or a week goes by, and the man would call her back. I've seen this happen so many times. The man would call her back and say, you know what? I've been thinking about it. I want to be with you. I'm willing to do it. Like, I'm going to go all in. Let's do this. And if in her own discernment, she decided that, okay, I want to give him a chance to really go all in like he says he will, then she may choose to partner back with him. And that relationship may get on a whole new track, a whole new trajectory. And suddenly he becomes like the most devoted, committed man. But the only reason she was able to call that forward in him was because she allowed him to experience losing her. If she didn't allow him to experience losing her, he would have never realized how much he wanted her. So your only power in a relationship is your willingness to walk away. And underneath, like when you're asking someone to meet a need, when you're asking someone to give you what you want, underneath each of those conversations, you don't have to say this. It's not like do this or I'm leaving. But there's an energetic understanding. There's an awareness in that conversation that if we can't find common ground on this, I'm going to withdraw myself from this relationship. Going back to the example I gave about asking for a good morning text, right? If you'll notice how I framed that conversation, there were elements of that throughout. It's not a threat, it's a promise. But there were elements of that throughout the conversation. If I'm going to continue investing my energy, if I'm going to allow myself to become more emotionally attached, if this relationship is truly going to go somewhere, right? These are the things that you insert into the conversation, not as a manipulation, but as the truth of your reality. And I want to say this: if you do this without the willingness to leave, then it's manipulative. Then it's a lie. But I want to go back to something I said earlier. We all have needs, right? And I want to acknowledge that being in a committed partnership, a committed relationship with somebody, is perhaps the optimal way to have our most sensitive needs met. Our most sensitive needs for connection, our most sensitive sexual needs, our needs for companionship, our needs for validation, right? Like it's probably the most ideal way to have some of these needs met. But it is not the only way. I can create awesome friendships, and I can join communities and find people to share deep, rich conversations with. And I can do this, and I can have my needs for connection and companionship met. Yes, it is not the exact same way or of the exact magnitude that a committed partnership would be, but in the absence of a committed partnership, it will suffice. It will meet those needs. I can meet my own sexual needs. I don't need a partner to do that. Yes, it might not be to the exact magnitude that it would be with a partner, but it'll suffice. It'll get me by. I can have my needs for validation met in different ways, right? Through my work, through my friendships, through there are other ways to meet these needs. So if I am going to emotionally invest in what might be the most vulnerable relationship of my life, if I am going to put my energy into something that is going to be the biggest energy investment of my life, aside from maybe children, if I'm going to pour myself into something like this at this level, then it needs to add something to my life. It needs to make my life better than it would without. And me being secure in that I can meet all these needs on my own, if I'm going to partner with somebody, they need to some degree, to a reasonable degree, and of course this can go to extremes, but to a reasonable degree, they need to take on the responsibility of meeting those needs. Not 100%, not all the time, not in every way. Of course, we still need to be responsible for ourselves. That can be taken to an extreme. But if they are not willing to take on any degree of that responsibility, then they're not adding anything to my life. I would be better to focus on meeting these needs in other ways and having all of my energy to myself. And that is how a secure person shows up to a relationship. So what I want to say in closing here is that when you communicate your needs, it's important that you do it from a place of knowing that you deserve to have your needs met. Knowing that a relationship is something that needs to add to your life. Knowing that you are worthy of someone's investment and time and energy. And this would be a whole other topic, but going back to what I said about being able to meet our own needs through quality connections and friendships and all those things I was talking about, I find that those of us who are most likely to unreasonably sacrifice ourselves in relationships are those of us who have not gotten good at meeting our own needs. Those of us who have not fostered healthy connections that are fulfilling in other areas of our lives. Those of us who have not learned how to really feel secure in ourselves without a partnership. We are the ones who are most at risk for a codependent type interaction where we unreasonably sacrifice ourselves in the hopes of receiving someone else's attention and affection. And if you find yourself caught in that cycle, if you find yourself getting into these I'll call them situationships because that's usually what they are. If you find yourself getting into these situationships over and over and over and over and over again, something that you fundamentally need to realize is that pattern is never going to change until something essentially changes inside of you. Until the blueprint through which you show up changes. Last thing I want to say on this is that a lot of us, especially those of us who experience the kind of pattern that I'm talking about, we tend to think that, oh, people are just avoidant, or I hear it a lot, oh, men are avoidant, or yes, there is a degree of reality of that. I'm not saying there's not a degree of reality. But a lot of times it's not always about someone else's avoidance. It's about how we are not showing up securely enough to call forward someone's commitment. Last thing I want to say is that next week I am hosting a 7-day Conscious Love Challenge, where over the course of 7 days, we're going to work closely together. We are going to dive into some of the essential healing tools that allow you to embody exactly what I'm talking about in today's episode. So the communication skills, like everything I've been talking about here, we're going to cover that over the course of 7 days together. And if you'd like to be part of that 7-day challenge, you can shoot me a DM on Instagram. Just let me know you'd like to join the challenge. We'll send you the info to get started. If you're listening to this on the podcast, I'm going to leave the link in the show notes right below where you're listening to this so you can join the challenge there. It's going to be a powerful 7 days together. It starts February 5th. And so grab your spot. Let's do this together. 7 days. We're going to work very closely. The feedback on the challenge has been amazing. People really love it and they get so much value out of it. And if you just dedicate 7 days to this process, I'm going to walk you through all the essential tools that allow you to really experience and embody exactly what I'm talking about here. So check it out. Link will be in the show notes, or you can just shoot me a message on Instagram. Thank you so much for being with me, everybody. Big love, big blessings to you. I'll see you next week. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk soon. Take care. Bye. Thanks again for checking out the show. Please subscribe on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on the most. And I would love it so much if you leave a review and tell people what you think of us. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram @TheLivingRelationship to connect more closely. And I'm grateful to be supporting you on your journey to love.